Welcome to TechieCastJax, where the top technology and business experts around discuss the latest trends in high tech. This podcast is hosted by Joe Holbrook, who's an experienced technologist pundit in Jacksonville, Florida.
Welcome to this week's episode of TechieCastJax. I'm Joe Holbrook. I'm your host. Looking forward to talking about a requirement that I'm seeing quite a bit of demand around, and this is absolutely a critical area right now, especially in the tech sector around IT, such as cloud, IT security, networking areas. And this is basically around the cleared work area. This is basically security clearance work and the requirements around working for the U.S. government and its contractors. Now, one of the questions I get, and just actually before I go into the questions, I'll give you a little background. I was in the military. I was in the Navy. I did DoD based tech work, so that was mainly IT and radio communications radar. I have a FCC license as well, and I'm more than familiar with the technology around what you need to work in government contracts. I've also done over 10 years on government contracts in the DC area, and worked at sites such as Fort Belvoir, the Pentagon, worked for vendors as well, such as Hitachi, EMC as well. So I'm pretty familiar with the clearance area and very familiar with the requirements around having to get certified, especially if you're going to handle specific types of information. And that's where information assurance falls in cybersecurity and the requirements around the workforce. So there's DoD 8570, and then there's DoD 8570-1, and then 8140. And there's requirements for you to be certified in these areas. Now, what I'd like to do is talk about the demand and how to get a clearance. One of the things that I think comes up is folks would like to work in the government sector, but can't because they don't have a clearance. Now, there's really three ways to get a clearance. One, join the military. That's the easiest and most direct route. Join and get something other than perhaps an infantry role, something to do with tech or security. That's really the easiest way. That was a route I took 20 plus years ago. And that's your, again, most direct route. You could also join the reserves. That's still the military. Another thing you do is get a job with a government contractor and hope that they sponsor you for the clearance. Now, getting a clearance is not a 5-minute process. There's a lot of investigation. There's different levels of clearances. And different types of investigations as well. And there's a lot of acronyms that go into these clearances like TS and SSCI and SBI and all these other terms. But that's another discussion for another day. The main thing is to understand you either go in the military, you work for a contractor that can sponsor you. Now, there really isn't a cost to the contractor to sponsor you. There's a lot of, nonsense about, it costs them all this money to get you the clearance. The government does the clearance. They just have to fill out the paperwork with you and submit it. However, the company needs to keep you on the books as an employee. Well, that's where the problem comes in. So if they're not able to bill you out on a government project, then they probably don't want to keep you, and that's why they're not going to sponsor you. If they're able to fit you in somewhere like in their commercial sector or something of that nature, then they'll keep you on, they'll sponsor you. I know several people that, have been through that route and it worked out well. On the other hand, if you don't do that, another thing that you would have to do is to get a clearance. Could also be, again, get a government job. So instead of working for a contractor, you work for the government directly. So those are really the three main ways. There's also another way too, just go into politics and, do nothing useful. And then, have someone that's a friend of a friend get you a clearance. That's another route. I know some people that did that as well. But that doesn't happen to a lot of people. So when you get your clearance, you're going to have a world of opportunities open up to you. However, there's a price to pay for everything. And that's, again, you have to realize, too, that you're going to have routine investigations every 5 years, every 10 years, depending on your clearance level. And you'll have to maintain certifications that, in reality are pretty worthless. And those are the CompTIA certs, such as IT security, related like Security Plus, CASP, or CISSP as well, not just CompTIA. A lot of these certs are good. You get them once, having to maintain them all the time is, sort of a nuisance in my opinion, but I'm not in that area anymore, but I just want to give you feedback on it. So if you do go that route, you need to maintain what is called your DoD 8570. These are approved certs. You want to go over to basically the DoD website that lists the certs that show you basically what certs are approved. Now, the certs are based on IAT levels, basically, IAM levels, IASAE levels, and analyst levels, and as well. So cybersecurity provider levels. I think it's CSSP is the acronym. Then there's DoD 8140. Again, this is a replacement for 8570, and it's really meant to leverage some newer frameworks, specifically the Defense Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. It's known as DCWF, basically. And it's pretty similar to the NICE framework that was used for the 8570. But anyways, in a nutshell, there's additional categories. Basically, the goal of DCWF is to help you identify basically cyber categories and understand different types of jobs and what you may do in those jobs. So the main difference between like 8570, 8140, etc., is that it's really an updated version. So 8140 is an updated version of 8570, and it was really meant to expand upon the certification requirements. It was also expanded upon too to ensure that additional certifications and training are provided and documented as well. But this is still an evolving area. Again, it's still a work in progress when it comes to these requirements. Now, 8570 is still in effect, pretty much, but 8570 is now really still part of what we're doing, basically, from a requirement perspective. If you're a defense contractor or military member. But it falls under typically 8140 now. And I think a lot of the basically units and facilities, they have some leeway in how they implement these right now. So I think a lot of this is more on a case-by-case basis, but there's still certifications that you still require, and it depends on the initiative and how it falls into that command, for example. With that said, I just wanted to just lay out, if you do want to get into the defense sector as an IT professional, there's tons of work, no question about it. You do need a clearance for most of these roles. If you don't have a clearance, you're going to have to get one and find a way to get one. There's 3 ways to get one. As I had mentioned, go in the military, reserves, go work for a defense contractor that'll sponsor you, or go directly as a civilian into a agency that requires clearances. With that said, that's all that I have for this specific Techiecast. If there's any questions, please reach out and feel free to contact me out on techcommanders.com.